Kira stood at the edge of the high balcony, overlooking the twin suns of Helira Prime sinking below the horizon. The sky glowed in shades of amber and violet, casting long shadows over the marble spires and glass towers of the city. From a distance, the planet looked serene, almost peaceful. But serenity was the last thing Kira felt. Her heart pounded like a warning drum in her chest, and a cold knot of fear tightened in her stomach. In 3 galactic days, her life would change forever, or perhaps end in social disgrace, depending on whether she could find a solution. 3 days. That was all the time the rigid Helirian law had granted her, and it felt like an eternity of pressure compressed into the blink of an eye. She had been a widow for less than a month, yet the Council of Elders insisted that she remarry immediately. Otherwise, she would lose her inheritance, her status, and her voice in her family's political affairs. Helirian law was clear. A widow without a spouse could not hold property, could not vote, could not speak at public gatherings. Her late husband's family would have every right to seize her home, her trade ships, and the influence he had spent decades building. Kira had hoped the council might show mercy. She had pleaded with them, offering whatever compromise she could think of: a temporary guardianship, a deferment, even a public act of humility. But the elders were immovable, their faces carved from stone, their words like steel. 3 days, they said. The law is clear, you must marry or all is forfeit. To be forced into another marriage so quickly felt like an impossible demand. And yet she had no choice. Kira retreated from the balcony and entered the private chambers she had once shared with her late husband. The room smelled faintly of him, a comforting yet painful reminder of the life she had lost. She sat by the window, staring at the intricate patterns of light cast by the twin suns. If she failed, she would not only lose her home but her dignity, her future, and the respect of her people. In desperation, she scoured the ancient records of Helirian law. That was when she found the clause that sparked a dangerous idea. Hidden deep within the sections on interstellar law, there was a provision allowing marriage to non-Helirians, provided the alien spouse was recognized by the Galactic Council. Humans were listed among the approved species. Kira's mind raced. Humans? They were rare in Helira's sector, known mostly as traders and adventurers. Stories described them as resourceful, unpredictable, and capable of great bravery. She had met a few on official visits years ago, and while their customs were strange to Helirians, there was a warmth to them, a spark of ingenuity that her own people often lacked. Could a human be her salvation? The idea was risky. Humans were independent to the point of stubbornness, and convincing one to marry an alien widow would be no small feat. But what choice did she have? 3 days. 3 days to find a human willing to step into a foreign law, a foreign culture, and take on the responsibility of protecting her future. Kira began her search immediately, sending messages through the interstellar trade networks, appealing to human outposts and trading stations. Her messages were formal but urgent, outlining her situation without exaggeration. Hours passed with little response, and the weight of time pressed on her. She knew the council would not extend her deadline for even a single hour. Finally, on the first day, she received a reply from a human named Jackson Marlowe. The message was cautious, almost amused. Jackson was a trader who had made a name for himself navigating difficult negotiations between alien cultures. Kira read his response over and over, her heart leaping and sinking at the same time. He asked for more details, expressing concern about the dangers and legal complications. It was more than she had hoped for. Many humans would have ignored her pleas or dismissed them as the concerns of a fragile alien widow. But Jackson had not. That small spark of interest gave Kira hope, a lifeline in a sea of despair. By midday of the second day, Jackson agreed to meet her on Helira Prime. He requested no reward, no political advantage, only the chance to understand her situation fully. Kira felt a cautious optimism. Humans were strange and unpredictable, but perhaps their strangeness could save her from a fate the rigid laws of her people had prescribed. The next day, she prepared to meet him. She chose her clothing carefully, opting for the ceremonial attire of a widow, not for ceremony, but to command respect and convey the seriousness of her predicament. She wanted Jackson to understand the stakes, to see that this was not a trivial request. When Jackson arrived, Kira was struck by the contrast between him and her people. He was taller than most Helirians, with broad shoulders and a confident gait. His eyes were sharp, observing everything around him with curiosity and alertness. He smiled politely but with the easy warmth that Helirians often lacked. "You must be Kira," he said, his voice steady, calm, yet carrying a subtle energy that demanded attention. "And you are Jackson Marlowe," Kira replied formally. Her tone was precise, Hellerian etiquette in full measure, but her heart raced beneath the surface. She led him to a private chamber where they could speak without interruption. Once they were alone, she laid out her situation, explaining the law, the deadline, and the consequences of failure. She did not embellish or plead, she simply stated the facts, letting the weight of the law and the ticking clock do the convincing. Jackson listened carefully, nodding at intervals, asking clarifying questions about the legal requirements and the risks involved. He seemed genuinely intrigued, not by profit or gain, but by the challenge itself. 3 days is not much time, he said finally. But humans are adaptable. I can help, but I need to understand exactly what this marriage will involve. Jackson leaned back, considering everything. It won't be simple, he said, but humans have a way of doing the impossible. I've done it before, negotiated peace between planets, brokered deals where everyone thought it was hopeless. We find solutions even when the odds are against us. Here was someone who could navigate challenges she could not, someone who might bend the rules without breaking them, someone who could stand against the cold rigidity of her people's law. They spent hours discussing logistics, strategizing their approach. Jackson's perspective was refreshingly practical. Where Kira had worried about appearances and formalities, he focused on action and problem-solving. Where she had feared opposition from Hellerians, he suggested ways to preempt conflict, to turn potential enemies into allies. As the first day passed into night, Kira realized something unexpected. She had started the day feeling trapped and hopeless, and now she felt a glimmer of excitement. Not romantic excitement, but the thrill of survival, the sharp edge of human ingenuity at her side. Perhaps, just perhaps, she would survive this law, and perhaps humans could teach her something her own people could not: courage in the face of impossible rules. By the second night, Kira and Jackson had drawn up a rough plan. They would present themselves to the council as soon as possible, bypassing intermediaries, showing that they were serious, competent, and ready to comply with every legal requirement. Any delay could be fatal. Every hour counted. Kira lay awake that night thinking about humans. Strange, unpredictable, often reckless, but somehow always capable of remarkable solutions. She had doubted that a human could step into her world, navigate her laws, and save her from ruin. Yet here was proof that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and she had no time to waste. The first day had passed, 2 remained. In 3 days, her life would be decided. But with Jackson's help, she might just survive the impossible, outwit the rigid laws of her people, and secure her future. As the twin suns rose the next morning, Kira felt a renewed determination. There was fear, certainly, and uncertainty. But there was also hope, that rare, fragile thing that could tip the scales even in the coldest, hardest systems. She would not fail. She would survive because she had to. And perhaps in the process, she would learn something new about courage, resilience, and the unexpected strengths of humanity. The countdown had begun. 3 days to live, 3 days to save her future, 3 days to trust a human she barely knew. Kira took a deep breath and stepped onto the balcony once more, letting the early sunlight wash over her. This was only the beginning. The next morning, Kira was up before dawn, the first rays of the twin suns casting a golden light across the glass towers of Hellira Prime. She moved quickly through the corridors of her family estate, reviewing plans and documents while servants quietly carried out their morning duties. Every detail mattered. Every misstep could cost her the chance to survive the council's deadline. Jackson arrived at mid-morning, as promised. He stepped onto the polished stone floor of her estate, his boots clicking softly. Even in the sterile and elegant environment of a Hellerian home, he seemed out of place, yet entirely composed. His presence carried a subtle confidence, a sense that he could handle situations that would leave others paralyzed with fear. "Kira," he said, nodding in greeting, "I've reviewed everything you sent me. There's a lot to consider, but I think we can manage. We'll need a step-by-step plan. Some factions hope I fail. They stand to gain my inheritance and influence." Hellerians often relied on formalities, intermediaries, and layers of bureaucracy. Jackson's human pragmatism was refreshing, and perhaps exactly what she needed. They spent the morning discussing every possible complication. Rival families, legal loopholes, bureaucratic delays, and potential protests all posed threats. Jackson asked questions that no Hellerian had ever considered. such as security protocols, communication systems, and ways to navigate the alien technology that governed the Council's processes. Kira began to see that humans' unpredictability was a strength. While her people adhered strictly to tradition, humans improvised solutions that others could not imagine. By midday, they had formed a plan. Jackson would accompany Kira to the council, presenting himself as her legal spouse and protector, demonstrating both compliance with the law and readiness to face any challenges. They would document everything meticulously, leaving no room for objections. Any interference by rival factions would be countered through strategic negotiation or tactical demonstration of competence. "Your people have very specific ways of handling authority," Jackson remarked as they walked through the gardens, observing the Helirian citizens passing by. "I need to know how far I can push boundaries without breaking the law. But if you act with honesty and clarity, the council tends to respect competence over ceremony." Where clerks expected deference and hesitation, he spoke clearly and confidently, providing identification and documentation without faltering. His calmness impressed even the most rigid officials, who glanced at each other in quiet surprise. "They are unusual," muttered one clerk to another. "No human has ever approached the process like this." After several hours of filing forms, waiting for approvals, and navigating bureaucratic checkpoints, Jackson and Kira reached the head of the preliminary office, an older Helirian with sharp eyes and a reputation for strict enforcement. He studied Jackson carefully, noting the human's confidence, composure, and evident understanding of Helirian law. "You understand the gravity of this situation?" the official asked. "I do," Jackson replied evenly, "and I am prepared to follow every rule required of me and to protect Kira in the process. Any failure will be noted." "They'll try something," he said calmly. "That's normal, we'll just need to be ready." He even designed a discrete system to document events in real time, so that any attempts to undermine them could be challenged with evidence. Kira began to see the value of human ingenuity not as brute force, but as cleverness, adaptability, and foresight. She felt a growing admiration for Jackson, not romantic, but rooted in respect and relief. In these desperate hours, she had never felt more certain that a human could be her ally in a world that valued rigidity over reasoning. The second night brought unexpected complications. A courier arrived with an unsigned message warning Kira that rival families were preparing to intercept her at the council. They would attempt to delay or discredit her, ensuring her failure before the 3-day deadline. Kira's hands trembled slightly as she read the message. "They know," she whispered. "They're already planning against us. We move faster and smarter than they expect." Inside the council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Helirian officials and observers filled the room, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and subtle disdain for the presence of a human in what was traditionally an alien-only process. Kira's pulse quickened, but she felt steady knowing Jackson was beside her. The first challenge came in the form of legal scrutiny. The council demanded proof of Jackson's identity, documentation of human citizenship, and confirmation that the marriage was not coerced or fraudulent. Jackson responded with clarity, producing authentic records, explaining his understanding of Helirian law and showing his willingness to comply fully. Some council members whispered to each other, doubtful that a human could understand their law well enough to act appropriately. But as the minutes passed, Jackson's calm demeanor and precise explanations began to win respect. He had a human trait that Helirians found remarkable. He combined honesty, courage, and reasoning in a way that disarmed suspicion. The rival faction attempted their first move, a challenge to the marriage based on technicalities in the paperwork. They pointed to minor discrepancies, hoping the council would dismiss the proposal. But Jackson anticipated such tactics. He presented corrections immediately, demonstrating foresight and preparation. The council could not ignore his competence. Kira felt a surge of relief and admiration. Humans truly were remarkable, capable of acting under pressure in ways her own people could not. Jackson's adaptability was a reminder that even the most rigid laws could be navigated with courage and ingenuity. As the day progressed, Kira and Jackson worked together seamlessly. He explained human approaches to negotiation, improvisation, and observation, while she translated Helirian legal and cultural norms. Together, they formed a bridge between two very different worlds, and slowly respect began to shift among the council members. By late afternoon, The council had approved preliminary recognition of the marriage. There were still conditions to fulfill, but the hardest barriers had been overcome. Kira allowed herself a small smile. For the first time since her husband's death, she felt a glimmer of hope. When they left the council chamber, Jackson paused, looking around at the bustling city. "This is only the first step," he said, "but we've proven we can do it. Your people underestimate humans, Kira. They think we're reckless, but we're also resourceful, persistent, and ready for the impossible. That's what got us here." That night, as they reviewed their next steps in preparation for the final formalization of the marriage, Kira thought about the 3 days ticking away. They had completed the first full day together, and 2 remained. The odds were still challenging, but with a human by her side, she had a fighting chance. She looked at Jackson, who was reviewing maps and documents with meticulous care. He was quiet, focused, yet exuded a calm strength. He did not flinch under pressure. Kira realized that humans had a gift she had never fully understood, the ability to face impossible odds with determination and clarity, even in an unfamiliar world. And that gift, she knew, could save her life. The 3rd day began with a crisp chill in the air, a reminder that time was slipping away faster than Kira had imagined. She rose before the twin suns of Helira Prime fully warmed the city, her mind already racing with the tasks ahead. Today was critical. Today, the marriage had to be formalized before the council's strict deadline. Any delay and everything she had fought for would be lost. Jackson had been awake long before her, reviewing documents and preparing contingency plans. He moved with quiet precision, like a predator aware of every detail in its environment. Kira watched him from across the room, fascinated by the human's methodical focus. She realized that humans were not reckless. They were calculated, observant, and capable of adapting instantly to new information. That adaptability had saved them in the preliminary stages, and now it would need to save them again. Their breakfast was quick, eaten in silence as each thought of the challenges ahead. Outside, the city was stirring. Helirians moved with their usual elegance and purpose, oblivious to the tension building in the private chambers of Kira's estate. But she knew that rival factions were already mobilizing. There was no time for hesitation. Jackson spoke first. "We need to move now. If we want to reach the council, we can't wait for permission or escort. We go directly and present ourselves as prepared and competent. That's the human approach, direct action, no unnecessary delays." They left the estate, blending into the streets filled with citizens and traders. Jackson observed everything, the flow of traffic, the behavior of guards, the likely locations for potential ambushes. Kira noticed that he did not move in haste. He moved deliberately, calculating each step. Humans were strange, she thought, but their strangeness came with a quiet power. The first obstacle appeared sooner than expected. At a junction near the council's main chamber, a group of Helirians blocked their path. They wore insignias that Kira recognized immediately, rival families likely sent to delay or intimidate her. Their faces were sharp with suspicion, their eyes calculating every detail of the human and Helirian walking together. Jackson did not flinch. "Stand back," he said softly to Kira, then stepped forward. One of the rival Helirians spoke, his tone dripping with disdain. "Kira of the House Lyris, you know the law, you cannot bypass protocol. Who is this human and why are they with you?" "I am here to assist Kira in compliance with the legal requirements for her marriage. We have prepared all documentation, and we intend to present it to the council without interference." Instead, they faced confidence and preparation, qualities they did not anticipate. Kira realized that humans had a unique power, the ability to command respect not through status or lineage, but through competence and courage. She felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this human could navigate not just bureaucracy, but the ambitions and schemes of her rivals as well. "Very well," one of the rival Helirians said after a long pause. "But be warned, we will observe closely. Any mistake and the council will hear of it." The tension had not eased. If anything, it had grown. But Kira felt steadier now. They had passed the first test of courage and presence, and she knew that Jackson's human ingenuity would continue to guide them. Inside the council chamber, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. Officials and observers filled the room, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Helirians whispered in low tones, casting glances at the human who dared step into their world of strict tradition. The council's head, an imposing figure named Eldarian, rose to address them. His voice was deep and formal, echoing through the chamber. Kira of the House Lyris, you are here to fulfill the requirements of Helirian law within the prescribed time. Present your case. And you claim to understand our customs, our legal system. Some doubted that a human could grasp the intricacies of Helirian law, let alone act with the necessary precision. But Jackson's calm and confident demeanor slowly silenced the whispers. Humans were often underestimated, and here he demonstrated the very quality that made them remarkable, the ability to adapt and perform under pressure. The next challenge came swiftly. A member of the rival faction rose, presenting a list of alleged discrepancies in the submitted documents. They pointed to minor clerical errors, hoping to invalidate the marriage and secure Kira's failure. Jackson anticipated such tactics. He had prepared detailed responses to every possible challenge, along with supporting evidence and procedural clarifications. Calmly, he addressed each point, correcting errors where necessary and demonstrating compliance with the law. The council members listened intently, their skepticism gradually giving way to respect. Here was a human who did not stumble, who did not plead or excuse, but who acted with competence and foresight. Kira felt a swell of admiration for Jackson, realizing that humans had a unique form of strength that was not measured by lineage or rank, but by ingenuity and courage. Even as the legal hurdles were addressed, Kira could sense the tension outside the chamber. The rival faction was not done. They were waiting for any opportunity to interfere, to challenge, to delay. Every minute counted. Jackson noticed it too. "They'll make another move," he said quietly to Kira. "We need to be ready for anything." Jackson responded with a calm authority that left the challengers flustered. He produced authentic Galactic Council approvals, demonstrated his compliance with interstellar law, and explained clearly how the Helirian law permitted this union. His clarity and preparation left the challengers without a valid response. Kira watched, amazed. Where her own people might have argued endlessly or resorted to intimidation, Jackson's strategy relied on honesty, preparation, and adaptability. Humans, she realized, could turn obstacles into opportunities simply by staying composed and thinking ahead. Hours passed in tense negotiation, discussion, and verification. Each step brought new challenges, but Jackson remained unshaken. He answered questions, clarified misunderstandings, and demonstrated respect for Helirian tradition while simultaneously pushing forward with the process. Kira felt a deep sense of relief. For the first time, she believed that they might succeed. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the council chamber, the final approval was within reach. Eldarion spoke, his voice resonant and formal. "Kira of the House Lyris and Jackson Marlowe, human of galactic recognition, you have demonstrated compliance, competence, and preparedness. The Council grants preliminary approval of this union. Final formalization will occur immediately, provided all conditions are met." Kira's chest felt lighter, the tension of the past 3 days easing slightly. She had survived the Council's scrutiny, outmaneuvered the rival faction's interference, and navigated a process that would have daunted even the most seasoned Helirian officials. Outside the chamber, the rival faction's members were quiet, subdued by the humans' effectiveness. Jackson glanced at Kira and smiled faintly. "They underestimated humans," he said. "That's often our advantage. We're unpredictable, adaptable, and persistent, and we don't quit." She realized that this experience was more than survival. It was a lesson in courage, adaptability, and the power of trust across worlds. As night fell over Helira Prime, Kira and Jackson returned to her estate. They reviewed the steps for the final formalization of the marriage, ensuring every detail was prepared, every potential complication anticipated. The rival faction might try one last move, but Kira felt ready. With a human by her side, she could face almost anything. She looked at Jackson, quietly observing his methodical preparations. There was no arrogance in him, only focus, determination, and the calm confidence of someone accustomed to solving impossible problems. Kira felt a sense of gratitude that went beyond simple thanks. She had come to understand that humans possessed a kind of quiet power, strength in ingenuity, courage in the face of adversity, and the ability to adapt when all else seemed impossible. And she knew that, whatever challenges the final hours would bring, they were prepared to face them together. The morning air on Helira Prime was thick with anticipation. Kira rose before the twin suns fully cleared the horizon, her thoughts racing. Today was the day the final formalization of the marriage would take place. Every detail, every moment mattered. The rival factions were still active, and any mistake could cost her the life she was fighting to secure. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, but with Jackson by her side, she was not afraid. Humans, she had realized, faced impossible odds with calm determination, and their courage was contagious. Jackson was already reviewing plans when she entered the chamber. "Good morning," he said calmly, without the slightest hint of stress. "Today, we need precision. Timing, preparation, and awareness will decide the outcome. If anything goes wrong, we adjust immediately." She felt steadier than she had in days. Jackson's presence gave her confidence she had not known she could feel. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but in their unpredictability lay resourcefulness and adaptability. Where her people clung to rules and tradition, humans found solutions. They moved quickly through the city streets toward the council chamber. The streets were busier than usual, citizens unaware of the drama unfolding behind closed doors. Rival Hellerians had been seen lurking in shadowed alleyways, their expressions hard, their eyes watching every step. Jackson moved with careful observation, noting the patterns of movement, the guards, patrols, and the likely positions of potential threats. He adjusted their path accordingly, leading Kira safely past clusters of those who might try to intervene. Humans have a way of noticing what others miss, Kira thought, impressed by the quiet efficiency with which Jackson navigated the city. She felt a small thrill of hope. Perhaps, after all, they could reach the council unscathed. As they neared the council chamber, a commotion erupted. A group of rival Hellerians attempted to block their path, waving official-looking documents and shouting claims of procedural errors. Kira felt her heart tighten. The rival faction was trying to delay them, hoping the 3-day limit would expire before the marriage could be formalized. Jackson did not hesitate. He stepped forward, his calm authority cutting through the chaos. "We are fully compliant with all legal requirements," he said firmly. "Any objections must be addressed within the framework of the law, not through intimidation or obstruction." Humans could turn tension into opportunity, she realized. Their ability to remain composed under pressure was extraordinary. The council chamber was tense when they entered. Eldarion, the head of the council, observed them with his usual measured scrutiny. Kira and Jackson approached the central dais, presenting themselves with precision and respect. Eldarion's eyes lingered on Jackson, evaluating whether a human could indeed meet the rigorous standards of Hellerian law. "Your presence here is unusual," Eldarion said, "but we will proceed. Present your documentation and confirm your readiness to fulfill the obligations required by law." Kira watched with relief as the council members began nodding in recognition of their preparation. The rival faction made a final attempt to disrupt the proceedings. They presented allegations questioning Jackson's authenticity and compliance. But Jackson remained calm, producing additional verification from the Galactic Council itself. His confidence, coupled with his ability to respond immediately to challenges, left the challengers without recourse. Kira realized that humans possessed a unique form of strength, the ability to combine courage, adaptability, and intelligence to overcome obstacles that others might find insurmountable. She felt gratitude, but also a sense of awe. In her desperation, she had doubted humans, and now she understood that their ingenuity could be the key to survival in a universe dominated by strict laws and unyielding traditions. The minutes dragged on, filled with verification, cross-examination, and careful observation. Rival factions tried one last time to introduce technicalities, but Jackson's foresight and preparedness countered every effort. The council members, initially skeptical, were now observing with respect. Humans, they began to see, could navigate alien laws with precision, courage, and clarity. Kira's heart raced as Eldarion finally spoke. "Kira of the House Lyris, and Jackson Marlowe, human of recognized galactic status, you have demonstrated complete compliance and preparation. The Council grants formal approval of this union. You may proceed with the final ceremonial obligations immediately." She had faced the most challenging hours of her life, and she had not been alone. A human had stood beside her, calm, resourceful, and courageous. She realized that humans' strength did not come from tradition or hierarchy, but from their ability to think, adapt, and act with integrity under pressure. Even as the council chamber erupted in quiet celebration, Kira noticed the rival faction retreating, their plans thwarted. Jackson turned to her with a small smile. "They underestimated us," he said. "Humans are often unpredictable, but that unpredictability can be an advantage. We adapt, we survive, we overcome." The journey had taught her something she had never fully understood about humanity. Courage was not just physical bravery. It was the ability to remain composed, to think clearly, and to act decisively when every second counted. Humans possessed that courage in abundance. The final steps of the marriage formalization were completed quickly. Eldarion presided over the ceremony, ensuring that every legal requirement was met. Kira and Jackson followed the precise procedures, each action performed with accuracy and respect. The rival factions watched silently, unable to intervene further. As the final declaration was made, Kira felt a profound sense of triumph. She had secured her inheritance, her status, and her future. More importantly, she had witnessed humanity's unique strengths firsthand. Jackson's ingenuity, courage, and composure had made the impossible possible. She realized that humans, despite their unpredictability, could stand toe-to-toe with the most rigid laws and traditions of alien civilizations. After the ceremony, Kira and Jackson returned to her estate. The city's lights glimmered as the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the marble streets. Kira allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The past 3 days had been a whirlwind of fear, strategy, and courage. She had faced the brink of disaster, and yet she had emerged victorious. Jackson reviewed the final details for securing her estate and ensuring that no further interference could threaten her position. His meticulous preparation was exhausting to watch, but Kira recognized its importance. Humans did not leave things to chance. They anticipated, adapted, and executed with precision. "Tomorrow, everything will be official," Jackson said. "Today, we ensure that there are no lingering obstacles. The rival factions may try something, but we've prepared for every possibility." Humans were capable of extraordinary things, she realized, not through strength alone, but through intelligence, courage, and adaptability. As night deepened over Helira Prime, Kira and Jackson reviewed the final plans. They discussed potential challenges, outlined responses, and double-checked every document and procedure. The rival factions had not given up entirely, and the 3-day deadline was nearly expired. Every second still mattered. Kira looked at Jackson, observing his calm focus. She realized that she had come to trust him completely, not out of obligation, but because she knew he was capable of facing the impossible. Humans, she thought, had a unique ability to turn fear into action, to navigate uncertainty with clarity and courage. Tomorrow would be the final test. The council would confirm the marriage, her future would be secured, and the rival factions would be exposed. But tonight, she allowed herself a small measure of hope. She had survived the impossible with a human by her side, and in doing so, she had discovered something profound about courage, ingenuity, and the strength of humanity. The twin suns set fully behind the horizon, leaving the city bathed in soft twilight. Kira breathed deeply, feeling the tension of the past days begin to ease. She had faced her fears, navigated a world of rigid laws and rival factions, and emerged stronger. With Jackson's guidance and human ingenuity, she had proven that even the most daunting challenges could be overcome with courage, preparation, and determination. As they prepared for the final hours of the 3-day deadline, Kira felt a sense of clarity she had not known before. She would survive. She would secure her future, and she had learned a truth that would stay with her forever. Humans, with their ingenuity and courage, could overcome obstacles that seemed impossible to others. The night passed quietly, the city calm under the twin moons. Kira and Jackson rested briefly, knowing that tomorrow would bring the final confirmation. But for now, they had reached a moment of triumph. The impossible had been achieved, the first steps of survival secured, and the power of human ingenuity proven once again in the face of overwhelming odds. The 3rd day dawned on Helira Prime with a sense of finality. Kira awoke early, her mind alert, every nerve on edge. Today was the day the council would finalize her marriage and officially secure her inheritance. Every plan, every precaution, every strategy she and Jackson had prepared over the last 3 days had led to this moment. There was no room for error. Jackson was already awake, reviewing documents and contingency notes. He had slept little, if at all, relying instead on a quiet determination and meticulous preparation. "Today," he said, looking up, "is when we put everything into action. The council will test us, the rival factions may try one last move, but we are ready." She had survived scrutiny, sabotage attempts, and a rigid legal system, but the final confirmation was still ahead. Humans, she realized, possessed a calm resilience that even Helirians lacked. Their courage did not come from rank or lineage. It came from the ability to think clearly under pressure and to act decisively when everything was at stake. They departed her estate early, taking the safest yet most direct route to the council chamber. The city was alive with morning activity, citizens moving to and from work, oblivious to the drama unfolding. The rival factions had been seen earlier in the day, attempting to mobilize agents and gather information. Kira's stomach tightened at the thought, but she remained calm. With Jackson beside her, she felt prepared for almost any challenge. As they approached the council chamber, the rival Helirians appeared, stepping into the street with determined expressions. Their faces showed a mixture of anger and desperation. They would not allow her to proceed unchallenged. Jackson did not hesitate. He moved forward with deliberate confidence, speaking loudly enough to be heard clearly over the bustling crowd. "We are prepared. We comply fully with all legal requirements. Any obstruction will be met with documented evidence of our lawful compliance." Humans, they realized, were not intimidated by threats or displays of power. Jackson's composure alone unsettled them, and the confidence in his voice made clear that any attempt to delay Kira's progress would fail. Inside the council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Eldarian and the other council members observed every movement, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, caution, and skepticism. The chamber was larger than Kira had remembered, filled with observers, scribes, and officials. The rival factions were present, watching silently, hoping to catch a flaw or misstep. Kira and Jackson approached the dais, presenting themselves with precision. Every action was deliberate, every gesture in accordance with Helirian tradition. Eldarian's gaze was sharp, evaluating not just the legality but the competence and preparedness of the humans standing beside her. "Proceed," Eldarian said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Present your documentation and confirm readiness to fulfill all obligations required by law." He answered each question with clarity and precision, demonstrating both understanding of Helirian law and respect for the council's authority. The rival faction attempted one final move. A representative stepped forward, presenting claims that Jackson's human recognition was insufficient and that the marriage could not proceed without further verification. The tension in the chamber spiked. Kira's pulse raced. Jackson remained calm. With a steady voice, he produced additional verification from the Galactic Council, explaining the interstellar provisions that permitted this union. He demonstrated his readiness to comply fully and his commitment to ensuring Kira's legal rights. His reasoning was clear, logical, and impossible to refute. The council members whispered among themselves, reassessing their initial skepticism. Humans, they began to see, possessed a unique combination of intelligence, adaptability, and courage. Jackson's actions showed not just understanding, but foresight and preparation that few Helirians could match. Minutes passed in tense silence as Eldarian reviewed the evidence and testimony. Then he spoke, his voice resonant and firm. "Kira of the House Lyris and Jackson Marlowe, human of recognized galactic status, you have demonstrated full compliance, preparation, and readiness. The Council grants final approval of this union. The marriage is formalized immediately under Helirian law." She had survived the scrutiny, the rival factions, and the bureaucratic obstacles. She had faced what seemed impossible and emerged victorious. She had not been alone. Standing beside her was a human whose ingenuity, courage, and clarity had made the impossible possible. The formal ceremony proceeded with precision. Every action, every declaration, every procedural step was completed without error. Jackson followed the customs carefully, demonstrating respect for Helirian traditions while maintaining his own human composure. Kira felt a mixture of pride and relief. The union was official, her inheritance secure, and her family's influence preserved. Outside the chamber, the rival factions were subdued. Their attempts to sabotage the process had failed, and they had no grounds to challenge the marriage further. Jackson's foresight and preparation had neutralized every obstacle. Kira realized that humans had a unique power. They could confront challenges directly, think ahead, and act decisively when others hesitated or relied solely on tradition. As the council dispersed, Kira and Jackson walked through the corridors of the chamber, their steps deliberate but unhurried. Citizens and officials alike glanced at them with respect. A human had succeeded where others might have failed, and Kira felt a profound sense of gratitude. "We did it," she said quietly, feeling the weight of tension finally lifting from her shoulders. Jackson nodded, his expression calm but satisfied. "It wasn't just me. You stayed composed, followed the plan, and adapted when needed. Humans have certain strengths, but it works best when combined with careful reasoning and courage, which you had in abundance. She had learned the value of courage, adaptability, and collaboration across worlds. Humans were remarkable not because of their strength or numbers, but because of their ingenuity, determination, and integrity. They returned to her estate as the twin suns set, bathing the city in golden light. For the first time in days, Kira allowed herself a sense of peace. The rival factions had been outmaneuvered, the council's approval was complete, and her future was secure. She had survived a process that seemed impossible, and in doing so, she had discovered a deep respect for humans and their extraordinary capabilities. That evening, she and Jackson reviewed the final arrangements for her estate. Trade routes, security protocols, and legal documents were all checked and confirmed. Every potential loophole had been addressed, every risk mitigated. Kira realized that humans' meticulous approach, combined with adaptability and courage, had been the key to their success. As night fell, the city quieted, the streets bathed in soft moonlight. Kira and Jackson stood on her balcony, looking out over Helira Prime. The city glimmered with life, indifferent to the drama that had unfolded, yet forever changed by the actions of two determined individuals. "You've shown me something remarkable," Kira said quietly. "Humans are different from what I expected. Courage, ingenuity, adaptability, I've seen it firsthand. You saved me, and you did it with a calm I could never have imagined." The galaxy was vast, filled with strict laws, rigid traditions, and complex cultures. Yet humans had a way of navigating it all with courage and intelligence, standing firm when others would falter. She realized that humanity's greatest strength lay not in power or numbers, but in the ability to face the impossible and prevail. In the days that followed, Kira's estate returned to normal operations. Trade resumed, political influence was maintained, and the rival factions' schemes had been exposed and neutralized. The council recognized the success of the Union, noting the humans' remarkable adaptability and foresight. Across Helira Prime, citizens spoke of the human who had navigated the rigid legal system and safeguarded a widow's future. Kira reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From despair to triumph, from fear to relief, every moment had been a lesson in courage, collaboration, and the extraordinary capabilities of humans. She had learned that survival often required more than compliance with law. It required ingenuity, strategy, and the willingness to act decisively in the face of impossible odds. Jackson prepared to depart for his next interstellar mission. Kira escorted him to the docking bay, feeling a mixture of gratitude and respect. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "You didn't just save me. You showed me the value of courage, resourcefulness, and trust. I will remember this always." Humanity had proven itself again, not through dominance, but through ingenuity, courage, and integrity. She knew that the galaxy had taken notice, and so had she. Alone on the balcony, she felt the twin suns, light fading, leaving a deep twilight across the city. Her inheritance, her family's legacy, and her future were secure. But more importantly, she had discovered the remarkable strength of humans, their ability to face the impossible, adapt, and prevail. For the first time since her husband's death, Kira felt truly hopeful. The galaxy was vast and filled with challenges, but she had seen what could be achieved with courage, intelligence, and partnership across worlds. Humanity's strength was real, and she would carry the lesson with her forever. The twin moons rose, casting silver light across Helira Prime. Kira knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that humans, with their ingenuity and courage, would continue to shape the galaxy in ways that no rigid law or tradition could ever contain. And she, having witnessed it firsthand, would never underestimate them again.